Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Out There Hour with Basil and Mark on Alternative Future Radio.
The Out There Hour on Alternative Future Radio. The Out There Hour with Basil and Mark. www.alternativefutureradio.com.
Yay! The customary yay, as is now tradition. Okay, well, hello. Good morning, Basil.
Good morning, Mark. It's wonderful to be here this morning.
It's not too bad. It's quite cold outside and it's even snowy, so I'm glad I'm inside.
We've got a very exciting show today.
Yes, we have. We have Tina Fiorda on the line just in a moment to talk about a book of insight, a fantastic book. We're going to let her tell you as much about it as possible, but basically it was written via the medium of Ouija board.
That's right.
Which is unique, I think.
Dictated from the spirit realm.
Yeah. So I imagine there's a lot to say, and I imagine it took quite a while to write, so we'll maybe ask her that in person, shall we?
Well, both the girls in their teenage years started to experiment with the Ouija board. And it wasn't until a few years later that they actually encountered some spiritual entities who have been telling them of the spiritual realm and the afterlife.
Sounds very interesting.
It does. I think let's just get on to Tina as fast as possible.
Fair enough. Okay, we should hopefully have Tina on the line. Do we have you there, Tina?
Yes, I'm here, and thank you so much for bringing me on your show. I'm very appreciative, and I'd like to let the listeners know that I'm here in Vancouver, Canada. It's 1 a.m. in the morning for me, and I understand it's 9 a.m. in the morning for you out in Ireland.
Just gone 9 a.m. Yes, we were up at quite an early hour today setting up, and Basil even had to drive here from some distance away.
we never get up that early, Tina. It's quite a shock to the system.
I understand. I don't get up that early myself.
And it's freezing here as well, apart from anything else. Even though it's April, it's actually got there's snow in the air.
Well, that's not good.
That's strange, isn't it?
Yeah, that is strange.
It's probably not that strange if you live in Vancouver, however.
Actually, it would be strange for Vancouver, too. We consider ourselves the California of Canada.
Oh, really?
Our weather's quite mild.
Wow.
Well, we've just been explaining about your book, Tina, and
I must also correct myself first of all, because it was written by Tina and her sister, Tilde Cameron.
That's right, but we only have Tina on the line today, which is wonderful, and we appreciate it so much. It's so nice of you to come on, Tina.
Thank you. Thank you. It's nice for you to have me.
Where do we start with this book? So, how did you get into the Ouija board? When did it start, and why, and what were you up to?
Well, it's really interesting. We were born in the Eastern Canada in Toronto, and when we were children, our parents decided to move us to Vancouver. And I was about 12 and a half, 13 at the time, and we lived with our grandparents for a couple of years. We had an aunt that lived there as well, and she had a Ouija board, and I happened to come across this Ouija board in a closet. I'd never seen it before, didn't know what it was. However, I read the instructions and thought it was pretty interesting, and as I got older, I started playing around with it. And that was my first introduction to the Ouija board. My sister, she's 8 years younger than me, so when she got older, I indoctrinated her into the Ouija board as well. So, and that's pretty much how it got started with it.
Go on, Basil, yeah.
How did I know you're from if it's okay to say, Tina, I know you're from a Catholic background like myself. What did your parents think of you using the Ouija board?
Well, they didn't really know what it was, and of course, as they began to understand what we were doing, they, quite interestingly, they didn't really think that much of it, and I always like to say that, my mother always thought we were kind of crazy, so I guess it wasn't much of a surprise to her. But luckily, our parents, although they're Catholic and we were raised strict Italian Catholic, they are quite open, and I think it's because I indoctrinated them early in life.
You were saying that you found it in the closet of your aunt, I think you said. Did she use it? Is there a family history of it or anything like that?
I don't even recall asking her. Never even discussed it with her. However, at that time, Ouija boards were not the scary phenomena that they are now. As a matter of fact, at one time they outsold Monopoly, and
Yeah.
they were advertised as being a good play board to use on a date.
Yeah.
Um, and there wasn't any hype, negative hype about it. It was all fun and
Oh, that's
games.
correct, because they started out in the toy shops, didn't they?
Exactly. And they're still selling them in toy shops.
Not here.
And I believe it was when the movie The
Oh,
Exorcist
wow,
came out. This
yeah.
was in the late 70s.
Yeah.
And if you recall, the little girl was playing with a Ouija board, and
Yeah.
that's how Captain
Captain
Howdy came
Captain
through, who
Howdy.
then possessed her. So that was the first negative story about a Ouija board, was through that movie. And then, of course, afterwards, it went from being a fun night with your date to being a scary night with your date. So,
I think that's what put me off of the Ouija board, was The Exorcist. Well, have you ever had any negative experience with the Ouija board, Tina?
very early on, I think I was in my early 20s, and my sister was still a teenager at the time. We had one spirit that came through and started cursing at us.
My God.
That was the first time. And it was at that time that we realized that it really wasn't a toy, that it had to be taken seriously. And it was a blessing in disguise, because it was because of that experience that we began to take precautions and utilize the Ouija board in a safe manner. We started meditating before every session. We now visualize ourselves protected by white light. We say a prayer of protection before every session, and we have clear intent and ask that only positive and loving guides come through to us with messages. And intent and protection is very important.
Okay, so it's about safety
It's about practicing safe Ouija.
and knowing what you're doing, because I guess the bad experiences are from people who are just going into it blindly.
Absolutely. And I think what's happening is a lot of people think it's fun and games, and because of all the bad publicity and the scary stories surrounding the Ouija, there's a tinge of excitement there. So people that play with the Ouija board, they play with the idea that, let's see what we can conjure up. Let's see what will happen to us.
Absolutely.
And of course, when you go into it with that type of an intention, you will attract exactly that which you fear may come through.
Oh, I see.
And what I like to tell people is that it's like making a telephone call. If you dial a random number, you don't know who's going to pick up that call at the other end. And it's the same thing with the Ouija board. If you dial a random call through the Ouija board, you don't know what's going to come through. Or if you leave your door open,
That's a good analogy.
you don't know who's going to walk through your open door. But if you open your door only to your friends or invited guests, then that's exactly who will enter your home.
Okay, that clears that up.
Yeah. Tina, tell me, I'm the skeptic in the room. I have to declare that. Tell me, the Ouija board itself, is it anything special? Because I mean, for example, if anybody can use one of these things, bad or good, does it matter that you're using a Ouija board? Is there anything special about it? I don't know that much about Ouija boards other than they were originally a toy. I mean, what makes them so?
Well,
do they work, or does anything work?
It's a tool. It's really a divination tool, like a crystal ball or tarot cards or rune stones. It's really just a tool. It happens to be the tool that works best for my sister and myself, because we're very close, we're very well connected, and it's almost like a conduit where my sister and I use the board together, and it's like we complete a conduit, like we're two parts of a battery. And when we come together with the board, our battery is completed, the circle is completed. However, what I'd like to let people know is, to myself and my sister, the board is just a piece of wood with a plastic pointer. You can take any piece of wood and write the letters of the alphabet on it and numbers and get a pointer, and it would probably work just as well. What's important to realize, and this is really incredible, is the human body is the channel. And our Creator is such a genius, is so intelligent because of the way we were created. We are comprised of almost 75% water. And when you think of it, water is a conductor. Our bones are comprised of a crystalline substance. I think it's called apatite.
Right.
And apatite is a conductor. And it's when you put all that together, the conductibility of the water that we are comprised of and the conductibility of the crystalline substance that our bones are comprised of, you can see that our bodies are actually receivers and transmitters of information. So when people think that it's the board that is transmitting or opening the portal, it is not. It is our mind intent and our human transmitters and receivers. And we are more powerful than we believe ourselves to be.
That's interesting, Tina, when you talk about the water, because it reminds me of an experiment. There was 2 vials of water, and love and hate. Love was written on one, and hate was on the other. And they were left for a while, and it was looked at the subatomic structure, and they had changed because of the words written on the vials.
That's interesting.
Have you heard of that?
Yes, I have,
Yeah.
and I'm trying to remember the name of the Japanese fellow that conducted that experiment. I've got his book, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, well, I don't remember the details myself, Tina. It's just roughly, and it's just it ties into what you were saying there.
It is so true, and everything is consciousness. Everything has consciousness. Everything has a soul, whether it's an animal, a human, an inanimate object. Everything is powered by the energy of the source, and everything has a degree of consciousness to it. So it's very important to realize that we are more powerful than we have taught. And we have actually been brainwashed into believing that we are less than what we truly are.
Oh, absolutely. Just how did a book of insight come to be written?
Well, it's very interesting because my sister and I, throughout our years, every now and then we would get the board out and do a session, whether it was to connect with our spirit guides or to connect with our loved ones that had passed on. And one day in 2004, we, got together for one of our usual sessions, and the guides spit out a message on meditation. And we thought, well, this is really interesting. Nothing like this has ever come through before. And at that point, we were told that this was the first page of the first chapter of our book. Well, we didn't take it very serious. As a matter of fact, we didn't take it seriously for at least 3 years. We put it aside and totally forgot about it.
Oh, wow.
In the summer of 2007, we were having a conversation, and we thought, well, remember that book we're supposed to be writing? Let's pull out the board and see what happens. So 3 years later, we get out the board, we do another session, and sure enough, the guides transmitted the remainder of that information. They gave us about another page or two. And the interesting thing is, when we put the page that was transmitted in 2004 with the pages that were transmitted in 2007, there was no separation. It flowed easily. You couldn't tell where one transmission had ended and the other transmission began. It was flawless and seamless.
I assume
And
that's
we were-
something to do with the time difference for us and the time for people in, what would you call it, an afterlife.
Spirit world.
They would have a sort of a flat, non-linear time, that kind of thing. Is that the idea from that?
Absolutely, because you see, time only exists on a three-dimensional level. In our dimension, we have to engage time in a tandem order, whereas in the spirit world there is no time. There is just the great now. So in our guide's dimension, no time had passed. The time had passed in our dimension. So that's exactly correct.
So, what types of messages were delivered to you, Tina?
Oh my goodness. Well, let me see. There was a chapter on meditation, a chapter on belief
All
systems,
right.
on how our belief systems create our realities. A chapter on magnetism, which is very interesting because what we call the law of attraction, our guides refer to that as magnetism. And not only that, but it's more than magnetism. The entire energy grid is magnetic in nature. And this magnetism either attracts or repels based on our thoughts. If our thoughts are magnetized in a negative manner, then we attract negative situations and we repel positive situations. If our thoughts are magnetized in the other way, in a positive way, we attract positive and repel negative. So everything is based on energy. The entire, all the dimensions, the universe, the mind of God, or the source, as our guides call it, it's all energetic in nature.
So think positive,
Think positive, absolutely.
and positive things will happen.
And positive things will happen. And it's really cool because our guides gave us an exercise on how to change our beliefs in order to attract a positive reality and in order to attract the reality that we prefer. And what they tell us is that when you understand how reality operates, then you will understand how to manipulate it.
You mentioned guides a few times there. Do you want to just go over who or what your guides are and what they mean and what they do?
Absolutely. Our guides introduced themselves to us earlier on in our Ouija sessions in our years. And there's Melanie, who is my sister's guide, and there's M and Demna, and M and Demna are my guides. And my sister likes to joke that I have more guides because I need more help than her. So I've got more guides. We've also had there's one entity called Mama who's come through regularly every now and then.
Okay.
And Mama tells us that she used to be our mother during the Renaissance period. At that time, she says that my sister and I were brothers in the Renaissance period,
Oh, yeah.
and that we were murdered by another brother for inheritance reasons.
Wow.
And so that's pretty interesting.
You kind
there
of
was
answered my
another
next question. I was going to say, were they once alive at some stage? The guides. I'm not sure. I don't really know a lot about
Yeah.
guides.
What are guides?
Oh, well, we all have guides. And the reason we have guides is because when we chose to be born onto this dimension, we came here with a purpose and a plan and a reason. But because when we come to this dimension, we lose our memory of where we came from and what our purpose was, we engage the use and assistance of guides in order to keep us on our path. And what our guides tell us is they are here to keep us on our path in this dimension of limited memory or limited knowledge. And we will hear our guides talk to us through our intuition. That is where they engage with us, in our hearts, through our intuition.
Yep.
And we all have guides. We're never alone. Our guides want us to know that. And we engage them to assist us, to help us. And there have been times when we have been guides and did not reincarnate. And there are some guides that have never reincarnated. It's interesting. We don't know if our guides ever reincarnated or not. We never even asked them that obvious question.
I suppose for them it might not really make much sense because they're not in the same sort of time system that we are. Maybe they have, and then they've come back within what to us may have been a millisecond, but to them may have been a lifetime. Maybe it works the other way.
Absolutely, and it's very interesting because time doesn't exist. All reincarnations happen at once.
That's interesting. You're going to have to elaborate on that.
Yeah.
Yes, and because there is no time. So we've experienced time. We experience in our dimension one reincarnation after another. We experience one lifetime at a time.
Right.
However, outside of time, where there is no time, everything happens at once.
Mm.
And it's when you're living in this dimension, it's hard to wrap your mind around it. I almost have to take myself out of my body and think about it from another place outside of myself in order to make sense of it. And another thing they tell us is that we don't necessarily reincarnate forward in time. Because there is no time, we can reincarnate from the present moment to the Renaissance moment, from the Renaissance moment to a future moment, because there is no time. So we don't necessarily reincarnate in tandem order according to our time. So we thought that was pretty interesting too.
So it's like a big melting pot of spirits and no time, basically, and things leap out of it and back into it instantly, or that kind of thing.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's just it's very fascinating
Yeah,
to
that is
think about
strange.
it,
Yeah.
and yeah, and it really stretches the imagination.
You were just saying there earlier, Tina, about using the Ouija board. You said meditation was important.
Very important.
And
And
how do we do it? How do we prepare?
well, our guides say that meditation is very easy. You just, go find a quiet place, be by yourself, and just get in touch with your inner self. And what I usually do is, find a dark place, sit by myself, or just get relaxed. And I use my breath as my mantra, and I focus on my breath.
Right.
And, you'll find that your thoughts, you won't be able to turn your brain off because our thoughts are always in there. After a while, those thoughts will just disappear. Slowly, they'll just disappear. And what our guides say is just let the thoughts rise up and then release them. Let them rise up and then release them. Eventually, those thoughts will dissipate and you will get to a quiet place where you just become aware of a stillness. And in that stillness, you will become aware of a greater presence. And that greater presence is the presence that we come from, our higher self, which is our God or our source. And what our guides tell us is that our meditation not only helps us to communicate and to tune into our higher source, but it's a good tool to help us develop our psychic senses.
Right.
It's a good tool of communication. It's a good tool to download information and to make us more aware of the greater picture. So meditation is very, very important practice. And what they say is that, we only need 15 minutes a day.
Right.
15 minutes a day minimum of meditation will help to start us to connect with our inner selves and our higher selves.
Time on your own and quiet time.
Absolutely.
So it's not only when you're using the Ouija board; it's all the time.
All the time. They
Yep.
say take some time and meditate every day. When you wake up in the morning, before you start your day, just take 15 minutes and meditate. And then get on with your day and make it a daily ritual in your lives.
Well, I'm a great believer. You mentioned in intuition, and it's almost like a sort of a psychic ability, isn't it? When you follow your intuition, you follow your feelings about things,
Yes.
what your heart tells you, and it nearly always works out well, doesn't it?
And this is exactly what our guides tell us in the book. How often have you ignored your intuition only to realize that you should have listened to it in the first place? You might be driving one day and something tells you to take a different route, and you follow that intuition that tells you to take a different route, and then you discover that there was a major accident and you avoided it because you followed your intuition. So, our intuition is our radar in life. It is the radar that guides our life, just the way, a ship is steered by its radar. Our guides tell us that our lives are steered by the radar of our intuition. And it's very real. It's not a figment of our imagination. It's what our source, our God, gave us to help guide us through life.
Now, in the book, we've had a little look through there, and there's a lot of talk about sort of changing your reality and the belief systems, and I believe you got a lot of messages pertaining to that kind of thing, didn't you? Do you want to go into the guide's opinion of? Did they go into opinion of things like religion, or is it just like a day-to-day belief systems of modern society? Because I know it's quite an in-depth book, isn't it? It goes through a lot of different things.
Oh, it's amazing. This book is a spiritual manual for life. It's really a book that every child should be given when they're born because it'll help guide them through their lives. The chapter on belief systems is amazing,
Yeah.
because what they tell us is that our belief systems help shape our reality.
Okay.
And our beliefs are formed at a very early age from the role models and the adults in our lives. Our parents, because we have faith and we trust our parents. They're there to take care of us and protect us. And we start adopting their beliefs and we never question it. And our teachers and the figures in life that we respect. So all these beliefs become our beliefs, and we don't even realize that they are beliefs, and we don't question them. And sometimes our beliefs can become the invisible bars that imprison us within our lives, and we don't even know it. And what our guides tell us is we need to become aware of our beliefs and the role that they play in creating our reality. Because they not only affect the reality we create for ourselves, but they affect everything, including our relationships with people in the world around us. And they cause us to view everything through tainted or colored filters. And it's really important to alter the beliefs by to alter our reality by changing the beliefs that don't serve us.
Right.
So if we find that we're holding on to negative beliefs or holding on to judgmental beliefs or holding on to beliefs that are affecting our realities in a way that is not serving us, that it's important to analyze our beliefs, to dissect them, and to really get to the root of the beliefs that are affecting our lives in a
Yeah.
negative way.
I know exactly
And
what. Yeah, sorry, Tina. Go ahead.
no, and once we discover those beliefs, it's important to replace them
Yeah.
with a positive belief or with an alternative belief that will attract the reality that we prefer to have for ourselves.
Yeah, that makes me think. I know we're both Catholics, Tina, you and I, and there were so many things that I had to let go of in the Bible because I just simply couldn't follow them. The thing about homosexuals and,
Yes.
You're always following homosexuals. I've seen you.
Don't tell Tina that.
Oh, sorry. That's Mike's supposed to be faded down. Sorry about that.
Were
Well,
you? Yeah.
I totally agree with you.
Yeah.
It's interesting because, I went to catechism as a child. And,
You're going to have to
had my
explain that
first
one to me, Tina. Sorry. What's a catechism?
Catechism is the Catholic version of religious school.
Oh, right.
And we call it catechism. And, we're taught, it's on Saturdays, and we're taught, the children are taught about religion. And, I had my first communion. And, even as a child, there was something inside my soul that just didn't relate to some of the things they were teaching me.
Same here.
And I dropped out of catechism after my first communion. At the age of 8, I decided to go to my parents and say, I don't want to go to catechism anymore. I just didn't. Something didn't resonate within me as a child. And I think that when we are children, we are more in tune with the true reality than we are when we become adults. Because by the time we become adults, those belief systems have become so indoctrinated within our souls that we don't realize how deeply those roots have taken hold of us. So, and I agree with you with regards to, the Catholic thing and not feeling it resonating what we were being taught, because, one thing we need to remember is that Constantine in the year 300 AD edited the Bible.
He did,
And
and yeah, many of the popes did over the years. That's the problem.
absolutely.
There was
So the Bible
yeah.
we have today
Yeah.
is a heavily edited version
Heavily edited.
of what it once was.
And I think there was a lot of bigotry inserted into it as well, on the behest
Yes.
of certain popes. So I would consider myself more a Christian now than a Catholic.
Absolutely.
Okay, sorry, Mark. Did you want to?
No, no, no. You work away there. Yeah, going back to what you were saying before about the changing our reality, and your guides call it magnetism. I know today it's called. Oh, there's a lot of different names for it, isn't there? There's sort of cosmic ordering, and then there's law of attraction, and all those types of things.
Oprah says something about it. What was that? The thing with Oprah Winfrey. It's not quite the same, is it, Tina?
Well, it's interesting because, people today, they talk about the law of attraction and how you attract that which you focus on, which is true. You do attract that which you focus on. But as I was saying before, everything is energy.
Yeah.
And the source is a conscious energy, of a conscious loving energy. And what our guides tell us is that if you strip away the density, if you strip away all the atoms, if you strip away the tiniest, most microscopic molecule that you can see through a microscope, when you get to the very tiniest level, everything that is below that is energy. It is all supported by energy.
Right.
And it's a huge energy grid. And that energy grid that is massive, that permeates everything, is magnetic in nature.
Isn't it? It's a mystery what holds atoms and molecules together, isn't it?
Just about.
It is. It is because
it's a force.
what are they? 99% space?
Yeah. Nobody knows what it is.
There's a lot of fresh air in the universe,
Fresh air,
or nothing even.
oh, do you hear that?
Or nothing.
Or nothing. Well,
Absolutely.
I don't subscribe to that point of view at all. May I be clear?
Yeah, so it's energy. Everything is energy. And like I was saying, that energy is magnetic in nature. And what's really interesting is our brains house the mind. And I believe that the mind is the interface between ourselves and the great source, the great I am. And our minds are also a filter that filters that energy through our brains.
Right.
And our beliefs form that filter. And our beliefs are either positive or negative. And as I was saying before, when the energy is filtered through our minds, our thoughts magnetize it and give it a value.
Makes
a
sense.
magnetic value.
Makes sense. But you just mentioned the source there, Tina. What is the source?
Well, what our guides refer to as the source, we refer to as God.
Okay.
And our guides call it the source. And the source is the source of all, or the great I am, or God, or it is our parent, it is what we are a fractal of, a microcosm of. Oh, and the interesting thing that's so cool that we have forgotten and that we've been brainwashed out of is that we are all fragments of the source in human form.
Okay.
Which means that we are divine.
Right.
We are mini gods.
I've heard that before, actually. I've heard somebody say something along those lines once before, actually.
And it's so cool. However, we've been brainwashed into believing that we are less than what we are. So when you think that we are fragments of God in human form, then you can begin to realize that we are many creators and that we have access to the energy of the source, because the source's energy is our energy. And what the source can do, we can do. And, it's interesting because we were talking about the Bible before.
Yeah.
And talking about Jesus, and Jesus saying that he was the Son of God. Well, today it makes so much sense to me now. And people at that time scoffed it, that he was saying he was the Son of God. But, if we are all fragments of the source, then we are all sons and daughters of God. And that's what he was trying to tell us.
David Icke said something similar when he first burst onto the scene in the 80s on British national television. He was literally saying we were all the Son of God. He was the Son of God, and all of us were. And he was completely laughed at. This is when it was one of his first public appearances.
Yes, I remember watching his interview.
Oh, yeah.
And he was ahead of his time. He was so on the money.
Did you see that interview? That particular one? It was
Yes.
on a show called Wogan. Did you see it, Tina?
Wogan. Yes, he was wearing turquoise blue.
That's right.
Yeah,
I remember
not a
it
good
so
start.
well.
Not a good start, in fairness.
Why?
Yes, yes.
What, seriously, would you want to be taken seriously wearing a turquoise blue tracksuit? Seriously. It's not a good start. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying.
In my case, I might wear hot pink.
Yeah, that would work.
Is there a particular colour that you think is good to wear, Tina?
Yes. But yeah, it's so cool that we are all sons and daughters of God. And, like I was saying, Jesus was saying that he was the Son of God, and it is so true. But what he also said is that what I can do, you can do, and more. And that's what I believe he meant when I say that our energy, the source's energy, is our energy, because we can use the source's energy to create in this dimension. So what he did, we can do, but we have to believe it, and we have to become aware, and we have to become psychically aware, and that's why meditation is so important, and start tuning in and connecting to our source, and running that energy through us.
But don't scientists say we only use 90% of our brain or something like
10%?
10%? Yeah, only
10%.
90. No, only 10%.
Oh,
Sorry, Tina, it's a bit early.
Stop being so
That's okay,
smug.
you use 90%, the rest of us use 10.
Yeah, that's right. I'm always telling you I use 90% of my brain.
Yeah. All
You
right,
need to
okay.
catch it. So, yes, sorry, scientists say we use 10%. So, what's happening with the other 90% is the question.
Well, that's a very good question. And, it could be that we have not yet,
Unlocked.
unlocked that part of our brain, because we have not yet evolved to the highest potential that we are capable of.
I think that's what you're saying in the book, isn't it?
Yes. We are awakening. One thing, too, that's saying in the book is that we are awakening. Mankind is now awakening.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
And yes, and it is our purpose. It is our goal. It is our purpose in life to become spiritual beings, to evolve into the spiritual being that we are meant to become. And towards the opening of our third eye, and towards ascension. And what our guides are saying is that this awakening has already begun.
It has, I think.
And we see that worldwide, we see the people that are rising up in the Middle East. We see Occupy Wall Street.
And even here in Ireland as well, it's huge at the moment. People are looking for answers spiritually, intellectually, and they're pretty repressed over here financially by the government as well. So a lot of people taking to the streets.
They're beginning to resist.
Yeah. Yes. And it's worldwide, and that is part of the awakening, because people now, where once people used to respect those in power and believe that those in power knew what was better for us, and those in power were taking care of us, now what was once hidden is revealed. And we're realizing that that is not the case at all, that those in power are just in power for themselves. And those in power were in power. Those are the real criminals, I believe.
And if you a little bit of research,
and we're beginning to see that.
Yeah, the bit of research I have done on people in power, a few things pop up. I don't know if you've heard of them, Tina, like Bohemian Grove.
Oh yes.
And the Bilderberg Group.
Yes.
And that really made me question exactly who was in charge.
Well, it's really interesting, because after we channeled this book, we actually had to read it, which is pretty interesting in itself. And once we compiled the book and I read the book, I just was blown away. And I spent literally 2 years after we published the book. I spent 2 years researching reality on this planet, because I really wanted to know what the heck was going on. Yeah. And I, uncovered Bohemian Grove, everything, the Bilderbergs, all the secret societies, mind control, MK Ultra, the whole alien thing, and, everything, and the experimentations underground in the military bases. And I'll tell you, some of the information I uncovered was just so fantastic that it was hard to believe that it was actually happening on this planet. And I went through very many emotional phases. I went through fear, I went through despair, I went through anger. I went through so many emotions until I finally came out the other end feeling empowered, because knowledge is power.
Yeah, absolutely.
And now that I know what's going on, it's like the blind man who can suddenly see. That blind man can never be blind again.
Yeah.
And I think that those of us on this planet who are waking up, we can never be blind again.
Yes. Obviously, you
And
can't re-blind yourself. Once you know, you know.
we know. And the interesting thing is that the Illuminati know that we know.
There is a bit of a religious, spiritual, non-earthly element to a lot of these organizations as well, isn't there? The one that is most weird, I could only describe it as to me, would be Bohemian Grove. The others I could explain
Yes.
away as being mad,
Yeah.
power-hungry maniacs.
Yeah.
But Bohemian Grove is... I don't know the ins and outs of it. I've seen the footage, but it looks very religious in nature.
A 40-foot giant stone owl called Molech.
Yeah.
That's pretty bizarre. That's a hard
Yes.
one to
Yeah.
explain away.
Yeah, there's definitely some kind of
Yes.
element there.
And fake sacrifices.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering what kind of powers are they conjuring up, and who do they idolize? Sometimes, and of course we see that hand signal that they all give, which to me is a satanic hand signal.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So, but what I would like to say is that everybody has a purpose on this planet, and we all come here with a purpose. And when we leave this planet, we realize that every role we undertook while we were here was really just a role, just as an actor on a stage takes a role.
Okay.
So if we look at it that way, then what we can begin to do is in a way, thank these people. Because if not for them
Yeah.
and what they're doing, we would never have awakened.
Oh, that's completely true, because they've
Served a purpose.
they've pushed so hard, and they've oppressed people so badly, and they've been so greedy that we're finally starting to wake up to them. So you're right. It was a good thing.
Yes,
It
in a
had
way,
to
it was a
happen.
blessing in disguise. So
Yeah.
when we start to realize these things, and this is something I had to tell myself too. Okay,
Yeah.
I can either get angry and depressed and fearful, or I can become empowered with that knowledge. I can give thanks to these people for waking me up,
Yeah.
and I can now move on. And I think that's what we all need to do. We all need to get out of fear, get out of anger, become empowered with that knowledge, and thank these people for waking us up, and then just move on towards building that new planet that we want for ourselves, because that is the positive way to handle this situation.
And this materialistic world they have us bought into, of buying with programs from like Super Sweet 16 and what's the other one, the Kardashians? is it?
Yes, yeah.
Oh my God, I don't even watch that.
It's all promoting money. It's promoting a lifestyle. It's just
It's completely false. It's not
sickening.
reality, is it?
It's completely
It
false.
is.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing is, our guides tell us that money is neither negative or positive. It's simply neutral. It's people who are negative or positive. And what they do with money, how they magnetize money, is what makes it good or evil. So if you look at someone like Mother Teresa, who magnetized money in a positive sense to help people, she attracted positive money. I mean, she was not necessarily wealthy herself, but she attracted positive money and did something good with it.
Yeah, she always got
So
by. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So it's what we do with that money. And it's important not to have money turn us into slaves, and not to have money cloud our judgment, but to have a healthy, magnetic approach towards money, so that when we are handling money for ourselves, we do it in a positive way, not a negative way. And not to be a slave to money. And this is part of the control system, is to keep you indebted.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you're kept indebted, you become a slave to money because you're always paying off a debt. So the important thing is to try not to become indebted. I've tried to become less of a conspicuous consumer myself. You know, I don't
Absolutely, yeah.
necessarily need new clothes. You know, I could buy something off of eBay instead of
Of
buying a
course.
dress from, you know, a store, brand
Yeah.
new. So it's important, you know, I really think it's important not to fall for the program, for the Matrix program.
Absolutely.
It's interesting. You mentioned just earlier, you were talking about the fear that people have, which actually still ties into consumerism, because that itself is based on fear of being rejected and not seen as one of the crowd, and fear is really a paralyzing force on the planet, isn't it? And you mentioned that your guides and the book talk about fear and how not to be scared about, you know, changing constantly. Things do change and they need to change.
Absolutely, because fear can paralyze us. And you know, if fear paralyzes us, then it serves us no purpose. However, if we use fear to motivate us into doing something positive, that's another story. So, you know, and of course, we all know that fear is false evidence appearing real. And fear is something that exists within your mind, and it is also part of the belief system and the program.
That's very
That is
funny,
very
Tina.
spooky. That's
Yeah,
the
that's
second
weird.
time somebody said that to us in 48 hours.
We had a guest on
Oh,
here
really?
on here Monday, Dr. David Hunt from the Holistic Healing Center, and he said the very same thing to us.
Well,
We
you
thought he
see,
made it up.
yeah, no, nothing is random. Nothing is random.
That is very strange. I've never heard that before. Now I hear it twice in
There
48
you
hours.
go.
I'm going to ask Tina the big question.
Go on.
The,
Go. You
the,
do the big
the
questions.
biggest question of all, Tina. I think what everybody would like to know.
Uh-huh.
Death. What happens
Okay,
to us
death.
when we die? Where do we go?
Well, we go back home,
Right.
and home is where we come from. And our home is within the mind of the source, where we were birthed from. And what our guides say is that our home is most beautiful home of love and white light, and you know, we are greeted by our loved ones and relatives and those who have passed on before us.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing they say is that once we pass over into our real home, even our enemies on this planet are our friends on the other side, because we all come here to play a role, like an actor plays a role on a stage. And what they say is what we refer to as heaven is our true home. And that it is the most beautiful home that we could ever imagine, and everything that exists on this planet exists in heaven too, but in greater splendor and beauty. All good things that exist here exist there. And you know, and that passing over is really nothing to fear, because we have lived and died many times and we're still here. And our energy is never snuffed out.
Yeah.
You cannot kill energy.
No.
Energy is merely transformed. So when we leave this planet, our souls are transformed from our dense bodies into our spiritual bodies. And another way to look at it, which may help people have less fear towards dying, is think of it this way. When an astronaut goes out into space, an astronaut has to wear a spacesuit in order to navigate in the dimension of space.
Right.
Yeah.
When the soul comes to this earth, in this dimension, the soul also needs a suit in order to navigate within the specifications of our dimension.
Yes.
So our body is the spacesuit that our soul occupies while it is exploring Earth.
Yeah.
And this spacesuit is made of the same matter that the Earth is made of. From dust we come, from dust we go back
From
to,
atoms.
as far as our bodies go.
Everything's made of atoms, isn't it? And molecules.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So when we pass over, our soul discards this spacesuit that it wears on this planet
Yeah.
Earth and merely goes back home.
Yeah, I rather...
Just as an
yeah.
astronaut comes back to Earth and takes off his spacesuit when he comes back to Earth, our soul also discards its suit when it goes back home. And so they say that, death is really nothing to fear, and we don't lose consciousness. We just pass over and are greeted by loved ones, and it is so beautiful.
And we're just here to have an experience.
We are here to have an experience. We are here to learn the ultimate lesson of unconditional love.
That's what I
And
keep telling myself.
Yes,
When things go wrong,
absolutely.
it's just an experience.
Did you ever
It
read
is. It's
Gary
just-
Zukav's book, Tina?
Pardon?
Did you ever read Gary Zukav's book?
No,
what
I
was
didn't.
it called? Seat of the Soul. Very similar to what you're describing.
No.
Another
Oh.
another Oprah book. Sorry, everybody.
Oh,
I have to confess.
He's a fan of the Oprah Book Club. I think he's subscribed to the Oprah Book Club. You can't talk to him.
Yeah,
My secret
I've heard
shame.
that book, Seed of the Soul.
Yeah, oddly enough, he describes very similar to what you're saying, and oddly enough, he was given his information from his guides as well, basically saying that people are here to have an experience, and there is no good and no bad.
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
And God is neutral. There is no judgmental God.
Yeah,
But
And
sorry, Tina. Now I've asked the big question on death. Now you've spoken about heaven, and here's a real concern of mine.
I'm not surprised.
It's a great worry. Hell. What about?
considering the people you follow.
I know. Yeah.
every Catholic is afraid of hell.
Oh wow. It's been drummed into me from an early age.
Oh, I know. I had an aunt tell me once a story about a little girl who looked into the mirror and saw the devil looking back at her, and ever since then I was always afraid to look at mirrors.
That's right. They do tell you things like that.
Thank God
They-
for
they tell
atheism.
you
That's
things
all I
like that.
say.
The thing, the one
Absolutely.
that used to bother me, Tina, was they said that God was watching you all of the time.
Oh no.
Yeah.
At all, even
Even
on,
in the shower.
That's gonna
I
put
was
you
going to
off.
say that even on the toilet. I used to disturb me when I was a kid. I used to think, God, you don't have to look at me now.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, the interesting thing about hell
Yeah.
is that, what our guides say is that hell is a figment of an unbalanced mind.
Okay.
So we thought that was really interesting. And religion created hell and the devil, because if there is a judgmental God, then what our guides tell us, what good is there to be a judgmental God if we have no punishment if we piss this guy off?
Okay.
Yeah.
So they created hell and the devil as a consequence.
You need a carrot and a stick.
Is that it?
Yes, exactly. So, to keep us entrenched within the matrix and to keep us in line and to continue to control us, they created a hell and a demon or a devil to put fear into us in so that we would, toe the line. Now, what our guides tell us is that if we believe we are going to go to hell when we die, then when we die, we just may create a hell based on our belief system.
I've got a question
Because
for you.
we are creators.
I read a bit about that, and I was left asking the question to myself: if you were of a mind to create your own hell and you died and you ended up in some kind of hell, could you get out? Where are you at that point? Are you still in this source, but experiencing a hell-like life? And can you get out? Are you in it for eternity, or do you know? Do you know the answers?
Well, our guides tell us that we can get out, and that we have guides even at that level, and that they are there to help us and to try and get us out of there. And of course, they also tell us that even hell is a learning experience, which we thought was pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what better way is there to learn about love than going to hell and realizing that love is the better place to be.
Yeah.
And of course, when we are in a place where we don't want to be, when we are in a situation that is fearful, we always call for God.
Yeah.
And I do believe and that at that place when we are calling for God and we are calling for an angel or a guide to help us, that we are still protected and that we are still guided back. So
So you're saying that there's sometimes a reason that we would go into a hell or have a negative experience. Am I right or wrong in extrapolating that if we need to have a negative experience, maybe then our spirits or souls or whatever you want to call them, they need to be neutral, or because if you need a negative experience, are you having too many positive ones? How does that work? Do we need to be sort of pH neutral, or I ask all the
Well,
awkward questions.
You do.
Never mind me.
well, the interesting thing is that, again, it all goes back to our belief systems and our thoughts, being positive or negative, and how we've been indoctrinated with our belief systems. And a lot of us, we've had lives or upbringings that have not been the most pleasant.
Yeah.
And that's all for a reason. We asked, for
Yeah.
instance, our guides, we said, well, why would a child be born only to have a horrible existence and to then die young? That it just seems so cruel, and there's no reason for it. And our guide said, well, you don't understand the greater purpose. And, that child may have been born in tragic birth or a short tragic life, and you might think it's tragic. But that child may have come for the reason of teaching his or her parents the lesson of unconditional love. And it's through that short life that those parents or those people were able to learn the lesson of love. And they said that the tragedy is not in that life being a short life or a painful life. The greater tragedy is if the lesson is not learned. That's where the greater tragedy lies, is if the lesson of love is not learned. Because we are really all here to learn the ultimate lesson of unconditional love.
Yeah.
Every lesson that we are taught, whether it be through negativity or whether it's through a positive reality, is all for the purpose of teaching us love. For instance, when we see a homeless person on the street, do we not feel compassion for that homeless person? Or do we feel disgust for that homeless person? When I see a homeless person on the street, I feel compassion for that person. And our guides tell us that compassion is a path to love. Because when you can feel compassion for someone, then you can begin to love that person.
But it's something that has to be learned, isn't it? Compassion,
Exactly.
empathy, and
Yes.
and even myself. I mean, it's something I strive for. I don't know if I always manage it, but that's my goal. At least is to be that way.
Yes.
And I know others who are not, who just don't care about anybody.
Stop looking at me.
I was looking at you.
This is what I have to contend with. You mentioned in your book about, and you mentioned it before briefly, I think, about reincarnation. That's
Yeah.
something that a lot of people are interested in. Do you want to just go over, well, basically what it is to start with? I know that might sound like a daft question, but I mean, how would you define reincarnation, and do we have it? Is it any good? Do I want it?
Well, yes, we do reincarnate.
Tina, I just apologize for him. That's all I can say. He thinks
That's okay. I'm having a great time.
He thinks you can buy it in a supermarket. Reincarnation. It will be on sale. He'll get it cheaply. He can't help it.
That would be great, because I would love to be able to buy the life I want. We can do that. That would be awesome.
Well, they've been telling us that you can buy the life you want. See, this is consumerism, isn't it? This is what they.
It is consumerism.
This
That's
is
true.
It's done through the television programs now. They're just adverts for a lifestyle for you to spend, isn't it?
Indeed, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but I think
Absolutely.
I think the world is changing. I think people are changing.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. Well, the interesting thing about reincarnation is that we asked our guide, we said, some people think that we have one lifetime and then we die and we go on to heaven and live eternity in heaven, and that's it. And our guide said to us, how dull. Is their response to us, how dull.
Okay.
And they said, no, to only have one lifetime and that's it, and then to just go on into the forever is really dull, because we are here to learn.
Yeah.
And the source is on a quest of discovery of itself, on what our guides term is a source of a journey of self-actualization. And that journey of self-actualization is actually actualized through us, through our journeys, because our journeys are the source's journeys. And these journeys include reincarnation, and through many lifetimes, many different eras, many different professions, many different genders at different times. And this is all for the purpose of the source's self-discovery in learning all of what it can be. And this is not only on our dimension, but this is on a multiverse of dimensions.
We'll come back to that.
because-
Well, that's the next
Yeah,
question.
no,
Yeah.
I just want to ask what might be another awkward question, but it's what I do. If someone dies on this Earth, you were saying that it wouldn't be. What would you describe it as? It wouldn't be great if they went straight onto an afterlife and spent all eternity in heaven. So therefore, they get reincarnated. Is there a system or a pattern? Do you have so many reincarnations and then heaven, or do you have a bit of heaven and then back to reincarnation? I'm just interested to know this kind of ins and outs. Maybe you know something about it. I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah, it's interesting. We never really asked that question. Is there a time when we stop? When we kind of retire and go on our pensions in heaven.
Yeah.
Because I was
You
thinking, I
know?
mean, if I was going to be reincarnated after maybe a hard life, I'd maybe like
You're
a little
right.
bit of heaven
Actually,
first.
Mark, you're totally right, because I say to myself, I do believe in reincarnation, but I also say to myself, I don't want to come back again. I've had enough. I'm tired.
But you might not have if you had a couple of weeks R&R in heaven. couple of weeks maybe 4 millennia.
I don't know. It doesn't
Yeah.
feel that way.
I don't know.
What do you think, Tina?
Well, I'll tell you, sometimes I think somebody made a mistake and put me on the wrong planet.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I wonder, how the heck did I ever end up here among all these primitives? Because I
Yeah.
don't relate to a lot of these people on this planet.
We
Same
have
here.
that thought often.
And when you speak about primitives, I've got one sitting across from me. Life is not easy for me. Yeah, but I guess some people feel that way about reincarnation. They're just they're here now. They believe in it. They're trying to do their best, but they're just tired of it. I mean, I
Yeah.
personally don't want to come back again. I don't think I do.
Oh, I would. I don't even believe in it, and I would.
Yeah.
Well, I don't.
If I had the option, I mean, I'd probably, as I said, have some time off first, but I would. I'd come back as something.
Thanks, Mark.
Well, you want to hear something interesting is our guides tell us that we've not only necessarily reincarnated back onto this planet, but we've also reincarnated onto other planets.
That's right.
There is a mention of
That
the A word in.
I just
in,
wanted to ask you about reincarnation and on Earth, or do we reincarnate on other planets, which I wouldn't mind, and perhaps
Yes,
another planet
yes.
for a change.
Well, our guides tell us that there are many types of life forms, many different dimensions. They say that we have reincarnated onto other planets as well,
Okay.
not necessarily just Earth.
Yeah.
And what our guides say is that there's so many dimensions. Some dimensions have, alien life forms that, we deem as aliens. Some dimensions have simple just thought forms that have no body but are simply thought forms that operate in specific dimensions. So, it's interesting because there are so many dimensions with so many rules of engagement and so many different life forms that the source has, I guess, thought of all possibilities and is experiencing itself in many possible ways that it could possibly even think of. So, it's pretty interesting concepts. There's some really
it's
way out
fantastic.
concepts in
It's
our book.
fantastic,
Yeah.
Because that's just what I'm saying. I'm tired of Earth, but it doesn't mean another dimension or another planet mightn't be.
Well, start meditating.
Oh,
Yeah.
I will. It's one thing I don't do.
I'll let you go first.
What, meditating?
Both.
Yeah.
All of it.
Oh, and reincarnating.
You can let me know. You can
Oh,
send me a message or
Thanks,
something.
thanks very much.
So yeah, what? Let me see. Your book is A Book of Insight. Is that's the correct title? A Book of Insight is the actual
A
title of
Book
the
of
book.
Insight. Yes,
Wisdom from the Other Side.
that is correct.
And where can people get your book? More importantly.
They can get it on the Amazon site.
Yep.
And I know that the UK site, I think it's amazon.co.uk.
Yep.
When you put our book, a Book of Insight, in the search section, it's important to include either my name, Tina, or my sister's name, Tildy, along with the name of the book.
Yeah.
In order to find our book on the Amazon site. But you can find it on the Amazon site, A Book of Insight. You can also get it through our website, abookofinsight.com.
Yeah.
And every book that is ordered through our website, abookofinsight.com, is personally signed by both my sister and myself.
That's very handy.
That's the one
very
I
good.
want. That's the one I want. 'Cause she's such a lovely lady. I've just enjoyed
Yeah.
talking to you so much.
We've put a link
Thank
to
you. Well,
your book on our website and a link to your website as well.
That's right. Yeah.
Thank you.
Which, if somebody's listening to this, it should be on the screen as they're listening.
Right.
That's brilliant. Excellent. Do you have any more questions, Basil? I think we've got just about everything covered
I
there.
have many more questions, but I just don't want to keep Tina up any longer.
Or maybe we'll wrap this up and we might be able to squeeze an after hours out and see if we can ask some more questions later, maybe.
Okay, but perhaps you might come back on and talk to us again someday, Tina.
Absolutely, I'd be happy to. I've had a very enjoyable hour, very enjoyable chat with you, gentlemen, and thank you so much for bringing me on.
Oh, no.
And I'd love to say hello to everybody out there.
Thank you. We appreciate it so much.
Excellent. Well, thank you for coming on, Tina. It's been most informative and interesting and intriguing, and the book sounds quite in depth. There seems to be it covers a large range of topics. It
really
seems
does.
from meditation to governments and consumerism and everything in between. It seems.
Yeah.
Absolutely, it's mind blowing. It's just an awesome book. I mean, I have to say, I didn't really write the book. I just facilitated it, and then I had to read it once we finished writing it. So, it's a pretty awesome book. I was impressed with it after we chatted it.
I must
What
ask
can I say?
one final question, and that is, if you had to write the whole book via Ouija board, how long did that take? That must have been quite tedious.
Well, you know, it's really interesting because we've been doing it for so long that the pointer goes fairly quickly.
Wow.
And we have a method. I wear a lapel mic and we record the session. And then after each session, Tildy transcribes it and then she emails me a copy of it. And the interesting thing is, we've been doing it for so long, and of course, as I was saying, our bodies are the channels, the receivers and transmitters of information, and it's a combination between reading the words as they're being spelled and receiving the information at the same time. You know, I had a very interesting experience throughout the channeling of this book because I had the sensation that there existed this block of information over my head, that the book existed as a complete finished unit over my head. And if the guides could just take that completely finished unit and go here, I would have gotten it all at once.
Yeah.
But because they have to channel it through the dimensions and our dense dimension, I had the sensation of the information being funneled into me.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, you limit the limitations of the medium, no pun intended. If you see what I mean, you obviously it's probably the only way it could have been done. Really.
Yes.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, thank you for coming on, Tina. We'll let you get off to bed because we know it's probably quite late where you are now.
It's just after 2 a.m. in the morning.
Oh gosh.
I was going to say, smile. It's already tomorrow here, so you know.
It's already tomorrow.
Yeah, I can let you know that tomorrow I can confirm is a better day.
Yes, absolutely.
Because we're already in it. We're in
You're
tomorrow.
already in. Good. Absolutely.
Okay, right. Thank you very much
Thank
for,
you.
for calling in, Tina. Thank you.
Thank you. My pleasure. Have yourselves a wonderful day.
You
Great.
too.
Thank you, Tina. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
That was Tina Fiorda. She and her sister Tildy Cameron wrote A Book of Insight, Wisdom from the Other Side, available on her website, as she gave you details there, details on the webpage, on our webpage. We have a link for a book on the webpage, on the front page. You can't miss it.
Alternative Future Radio.
AlternativeFutureRadio.com. We should wrap up by giving some contact details. If you want to get hold of us, it's helpdesk@AlternativeFutureRadio.com. You can tweet us or tweet at us if you like. We'll take either. And at Out There Hour. Facebook.com/Out There Hour. YouTube.com/AF Radio YT. And if you want to, you can even add us on Skype, or you can send us a message on Skype at AFRGuest, and that's AFRGUEST. And you don't even have to add us if you want to send us a little text message. You can just send that. That's open to all. So there we go. That was very interesting, wasn't it, Basil?
So let's wrap it up.
Yeah, right. Well, that was it. Our thanks again to Tina.
Tina, yeah.
And that was great. It was a brilliant time.
We'll see you next time.
See you all later, everybody. Bye-bye. Okay, we should hopefully have Tina on the line. Do we have you there, Tina?
Yes, I'm here, and thank you so much for bringing me on your show. I'm very appreciative, and I'd like to let the listeners know that I'm here in Vancouver, Canada. It's 1 a.m. in the morning for me, and I understand it's 9 a.m. in the morning for you out in Ireland.
Just gone 9 a.m. Yes, we were up at quite an early hour today setting up, and Basil even had to drive here from some distance away.
we never get up that early, Tina. It's quite a shock to the system.
I understand. I don't get up that early myself.
And it's freezing here as well, apart from anything else. Even though it's April, it's actually got there's snow in the air.
Well, that's not good.
That's strange, isn't it?
Yeah, that is strange.
It's probably not that strange if you live in Vancouver, however.
Actually, it would be strange for Vancouver, too. We consider ourselves the California of Canada.
Oh, really?
Our weather's quite mild.
Wow.
Well, we've just been explaining about your book, Tina, and
I must also correct myself first of all, because it was written by Tina and her sister, Tilde Cameron.
that's right. But we only have Tina on the line
only have
today,
Tina on
which
the
is
line.
wonderful, and we appreciate it so much. It's so nice of you to come on, Tina.
Thank you. Thank you. It's nice for you to have me.
Where do we start with this this book? So, well, how did you get into the Ouija board? When did it start, and why, and what were you up to?
Well, it's really interesting. We were born in the eastern Canada, in Toronto, and when we were children, our parents decided to move us to Vancouver. And I was about 12 and a half, 13 at the time, and we lived with our grandparents for a couple of years. We had an aunt that lived
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Out There Hour with Basil and Mark on Alternative Future Radio.
The Out There Hour on Alternative Future Radio. The Out There Hour with Basil and Mark.
www.alternativefutureradio.com. Yay! The customary yay, as is now tradition. Okay, well, hello. Good morning, Basil.
Good morning, Mark. It's wonderful to be here this morning.
It's not too bad. It's quite cold outside and it's even snowy, so I'm glad I'm inside.
We've got a very exciting show today.
Yes, we have. We have Tina Fiorda on the line just in a moment to talk about a book of insight, a fantastic book. We're going to let her tell you as much about it as possible, but basically it was written via the medium of Ouija board.
That's right.
Which is unique, I think.
Dictated from the spirit realm.
Yeah. So I imagine there's a lot to say, and I imagine it took quite a while to write, so we'll maybe ask her that in person, shall we?
Well, both the girls in their teenage years started to experiment with the Ouija board. And it wasn't until a few years later that they actually encountered some spiritual entities
Yeah.
who have been telling them of the spiritual realm and the afterlife.
Sounds very interesting.
It does. I think let's just get on to Tina
Yes.
as fast as possible.
Fair enough.
board to use on a date.
Yeah.
And so there wasn't any hype, negative hype about it. It was all fun and
Oh, that's
games.
correct, because they started out in the toy shops, didn't they?
Exactly. And they're still selling them in toy shops.
Not here.
And I believe it was when The Exorcist, the movie The
Oh,
Exorcist
wow,
came out.
yeah.
This was in the late 70s.
Yeah,
And if you recall, the little girl was playing with a Ouija board, and
yeah.
that's how Captain
Captain
Howdy came
Captain
through, who
Howdy.
then possessed her. So that was the first negative story about a Ouija board, was through that movie. And then, of course, afterwards, it went from being a fun night with your date to being a scary night with your date. So,
I think that's what put me off of the Ouija board, was The Exorcist. But well, have you ever had any negative experience with the Ouija board, Tina?
very early on, I think I was in my early 20s, and my sister was still a teenager at the time. We had one spirit that came through and started cursing at us.
My God.
That was the first time. And it was at that time that we realized that it really wasn't a toy, that it had to be taken seriously. And it was a blessing in disguise, because it was because of that experience that we began to take precautions and utilize the Ouija board in a safe manner. We started meditating before every session. We now visualize ourselves protected by white light. We say a prayer of protection before every session, and we have clear intent and ask that only positive and loving guides come through to us with messages. And intent and protection is very important there as well. And she had a Ouija board, and I happened to come across this Ouija board in a closet. I'd never seen it before, didn't know what it was. However, I read the instructions and thought it was pretty interesting. And as I got older, I started playing around with it. And that was my first introduction to the Ouija board. My sister, she's 8 years younger than me, so when she got older, I indoctrinated her into the Ouija board as well. So,
And
and that's pretty much how it got started with it.
go on,
Yeah.
Basil. Yeah.
How did your? I know you're from a. If it's okay to say, Tina, I know you're from a Catholic background like myself. What did your parents think of you using the Ouija board?
Well, they didn't really know what it was. And of course, as they began to understand what we were doing, they, quite interestingly, they didn't really think that much of it. And I always like to say that, my mother always thought we were kind of crazy, so I guess it wasn't much of a surprise to her.
You,
But
you,
luckily, our parents, although they're Catholic and we were raised strict Italian Catholic, they are quite open. And I think it's because I indoctrinated them early in life.
you were saying that you found it in the closet of your aunt, I think you said. Did she use it? Is there a family history of it or anything like that?
I don't even recall asking her, never even discussed it with her. However, at that time, Ouija boards were not the scary phenomena that they are now. As a matter of fact, at one time they outsold Monopoly, and
Yeah.
they were advertised as being a good play.
Okay, so it's about safety
It's about practicing safe Ouija.
and knowing what you're doing, because I guess the bad experiences are from people who are just going into it blindly.
Absolutely. And I think what's happening is a lot of people think it's fun and games, and because of all the bad publicity and the scary stories surrounding the Ouija, there's a tinge of excitement there. So people that play with the Ouija board, they play with the idea that, let's see what we can conjure up. Let's see what will happen to us.
Absolutely.
And of course, when you go into it with that type of an intention, you will attract exactly that which you fear may come through.
Oh, I see.
And what I like to tell people is that it's like making a telephone call. If you dial a random number, you don't know who's going to pick up that call at the other end. And it's the same thing with the Ouija board. If you dial a random call through the Ouija board, you don't know what's going to come through. Or if you leave your door open,
That's a good
you
analogy.
don't you don't know who's going to walk through your open door. But if you open your door only to your friends or invited guests, then that's exactly who will enter your home.
Okay, that clears that up.
Yeah. Tina, tell me, I'm the skeptic in the room. I have to declare that. Tell me, the Ouija board itself, is it anything special? Because I know, I mean, for example, if anybody can use one of these things, bad or good, do you does it matter that you're using a Ouija board? What is there anything special about it? I don't know that much about Ouija boards other than they were originally a toy. I mean, what makes them so? Do
Well,
they work or does anything work?
it's a tool. It's really a divination tool, like a crystal ball or tarot cards or rune stones.